Hi, don't you want to rev up your Harley? Vroom vroom. Andrew, and this is Gayties Toys. So we are back to the Superpowers collection for MIA 80s ladies, and that's because we have a lot to get through, and that's even within the confines of trying to keep it to the 1980s style guide. So today we're going to be looking at probably DC's most successful, and by that I mean bankable characters, now known as the Gotham City Sirens. The actual name of the group, Gotham City Sirens, was not a thing until 2009, but now is sort of collectively, what Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn as a team is known as. This MIA 80s ladies is a bit of a cheat. One, because Harley Quinn was not a thing back during the original Kenner Superpowers line, but also, she was not in the style guide accordingly. So she is a character that I'm kind of sneaking into this series, but if you're familiar with the character, you probably know why, and we'll get back to that later. These characters are juggernauts of media and merchandise, so I would be surprised if you didn't know them. I mean, these characters are people that, Joe Tractor knows of, if, asked. So I'm going to be kind of brief with an overview of who they are, but let's of course start with the grandmammy of all villainesses, Catwoman. Catwoman was one of those characters, not just, female characters, but just comic book characters that, succeeded in the golden age of comics right through to today, alongside Wonder Woman, Lois Lane, that kind of thing. So she's a real staple of not just DC, but comic books. She first appeared in Batman #1 in 1940, created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. And she was simply known as the Cat at the time, but she would go become a central pillar of what became Batman's Rogues Gallery, and was effectively his first member. After the golden age of comics, however, there was what's known as the Silver Age, and that was really kind of marked by what's known as the Comics Authority, and that's where they kind of stripped comics of, sex, violence, drugs, joy, reasons for getting out of bed, all that stuff. So for the first half of the Silver Age, she really kind of sat that out because her character was just too horny, but the success of the 1966 Batman show propelled her back into the spotlight, and she's been very much in the spotlight ever since. Speaking of the 60s Batman show and the Silver Age, the absence of Catwoman and then her success in that show propelled DC to want to create more female villains for Batman. In that stead, they decided to go with Poison Ivy, who was also a very horny character. She debuted in Batman #181 in 1966, and she had a bit of a slow start, let's say, but the success of Batman the Animated Series and how they really put a spotlight on her launched her career into the public eye, and again is one of those characters that really is synonymous with Batman and DC since. And speaking of Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn was a huge, character breakout from that show. She first debuted in an episode in 1992 called The Joker's Favor, and she was originally, conceived of as just a hench girl for the Joker, but her success immediately was apparent, and she has become an absolute juggernaut of toys, of merch, of Halloween costumes. She is just, someone who, even Jim Lee, one of the co-publishers of DC Comics now, sort of says where there's, the usual trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are, the pillars of the DC merchandising arm, but he does consider Harley Quinn to be the fourth pillar. As for Kenner's Superpowers line, it is a seminal, perfect line, and I won't hear otherwise, except for Wave 2. It ran from 1984 to 1986 and included 3 waves. We've covered it in more, detail in the Teen Titans video, but it was very celebrated, but also absent of a lot of women, except for Wonder Woman from Wave 1. Since that time, a lot of information has come out, good or bad, we'll get to it, about what would have been Wave 4, Wave 5, beyond. A lot of concept art, a lot of, just sort of, ideas around the original pitch for the line. A lot of juicy stuff, and one thing in particular is of note here. We'll knock off Harley, of course, because she wasn't even created yet. Poison Ivy was not a big, figure as in a character sense in DC at that time, so it's possible the name was bandied about in the offices, but she was never on the table. Catwoman, however, when it comes to Catwoman and Kenner's superpowers, I want to be very careful with what I say versus the usual flubbing of words that I'm kind of, known for at this stage. She was not part of the original Kenner pitch. They did include a vehicle called the Catcrawler, which by association, you would think they would, had her on their mind as the, vehicle driver for this thing. Catwoman herself was never photoed, never, on a list, never part of Kenner's plans beyond Wave 3. Hard stop. Another quick disclaimer is that Tomart's Action Figure Digest from, the before times, before the internet became the news source for toy news, was an icon, was, just an absolute gem of toy news. So I'm not going to disparage them. However, there was a bit of misinformation, not, insidious in any way, but their issue 114, cover girl of that issue was a Catwoman action figure that they had digitally painted for the cover. It claimed in that magazine that Catwoman action figure was the one prototyped for the Superpowers line. There were still questions by toy, historians, for lack of a better word, about the costume choice for this Catwoman, but there was legitimacy, made for the article in that 2008 Hakes auction house auctioned off the prototype with, a certificate of authenticity that this was the Kenner's superpower Catwoman. More recently, however, Jason Geyer, better known as actual toy historian Toy Otter, did sort of, follow up this original article with some sort of, new evidence suggesting that Catwoman was not, in fact, part of the Superpowers, plan. Perhaps part of the pitch, not part of the plan. Furthermore, he does really kind of nail, the one nagging thing that we all had, and that was the costume. If this Catwoman prototype were to be made for the 1987 line, or even 1988, she would have had to have been worked on about a year or two in advance. The problem being, this costume was not a thing until 1987, when the figure would have been, on shelves. This didn't debut until Batman Year One, and would stay her costume largely until 1993, when Catwoman with the big purple bajongas started coming around. Any costume Catwoman would have worn in a Superpowers line probably would have been one that she's very well known for from the Silver Age and early Bronze Age, and that being the purple dress with the more mediocre bajongas. Same with the green cape, the long hair at the back. That was more the style guide version of Catwoman, and that's what probably Kenner would have gone with had she been on the table. In most final verdict videos, I'll say, the figure wasn't made, have we had some since? And the answer in the case of all three characters is yes, a great many number of figures. For the Catwoman in question, she's had a bit of an interesting journey. So Toy Otter suggests that, this figure was probably part of a different, inclusive Batman or DC line that Kenner would have made when they got the rights back in the early 90s. That said, that character and her horrible, on-the-prowl stance informed every single Catwoman that came after her under Kenner's reign. I mean, between Batman Returns, Batman the Animated Series, Legends of Batman, even the Batman animated Poison Ivy had that same stupid stance. That figure had such an impact on, childs of the 90s. So, I mean, at least that has a legacy all its own. Superpower specifically, though, is a very special little animal in that we do currently, time of recording, have a line that is a spiritual successor to the original, a sequel, if you will, and that is being done by Todd McFarlane's McFarlane Toys. I got into the Todd of it all in the last video. If you'd like to see me, spitting rage, go check that out, link below. But we're not going to discuss He Who Shall Not Be Named currently. We will discuss, however, how the ladies have done in that line, and if you've been following that line, you know what a joke that is. Day of recording, I am actually, we're sitting in the midst of New York Comic Con 2024. The McFarlane panel just happened. Wave 10 was announced. No ladies. No surprise to anyone. I don't know why I'm surprised every time, but here's the thing about this video series, that I'm doing them in batches of 3 where I can, on purpose. That being because McFarlane has experimented with 3-packs for lesser-known characters. Would he do a 3-pack of all women? Absolutely not. But nevertheless, these 3 characters, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, are huge bankable, do you love money Todd characters. These are characters that if you walked into a Hot Topic, they are on every mug, every t-shirt, every purse, every Halloween costume, they're everywhere. They are a juggernaut of income. So if there was any plans, any conceit to do, some experimentation in the Superpowers line, a 3-pack on the McFarlane store targeted directly towards adults would be a good litmus test to see how much do you love money, Todd. And now we're back to pragmatic Andrew. So, barring that man's decision and stubborn defiance of what the fans want, there's some options. So, the Batman, the animated series Harley Quinn figure that did come out might be a bit taller than what you would like, but she does slot into your collection pretty well. For Poison Ivy, less options, at least in that scale. In a fun turnaround of events, Toy Otter did do some covers for DC Comics in spring of 2024. One of them was a variant cover of a Gotham City Sirens revival, and that was of a Poison Ivy figure, perfectly executed, on a Superpowers background. And I mean, it is the figure we all wish we could get. Likewise, if you hit up Etsy, eBay, whatever, there's plenty of, custom figures out there that you could pick up. My personal favorite is, friend of the channel, Multiversity, and he does incredible work. These are customs, bear in mind. They are a little pricier, bear in mind. Don't complain about it. His Catwoman, long sold out. Perhaps he'll go back and make more, but it is the perfect Catwoman figure. Could not ask for better. So keep your eyes peeled if you're, in the market, and definitely keep an eye on his site for more figures in the future, particularly the ladies. And that's about it for today's MIA 80s Ladies on the Superpowers Gotham City Sirens. These are truly some of my favorite characters. I don't really buy a lot of villains from Superpowers personally, but these are 3 I would have no choice but to buy. We will, of course, have many more Ladies Under the Superpowers banner to go in the future, and I'm hoping someday in the future to actually have some good news at the end of these videos. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, thank you for commenting, liking, subscribing. Make sure you spay and neuter your cats, hyenas, and horrible, horrible plant monsters. And I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.